All right, we're shifting gear to our good friend Scott Springer, who is on the UC beat on everything that is UC. All right, Scott, you tell me. Welcome to the show. Thanks for your time. You want to talk about the weird stuff or the good stuff first? We're going to get to it.
Your show, wherever you want to go, I'll try to follow.
I want to ask you about the weird stuff because this story that you followed up on, I think you pointed out to me. You said, look, I don't deserve the credit, meaning you. You said Pat Forty was originally the one who broke this story. Help me with this to make sure I've got this right. Okay, you've got a baseball coach at the University of Alabama who, through a friend or somebody in Cincinnati, is going to bet against his team to lose in a college baseball game against LSU. So he gives this information to a guy who then walks in to MGM inside of Great American Ballpark and places a bet for the Alabama coach to the tune of?
Well, I mean, the number I heard was like 50 grand, which is going to raise some eyebrows.
Well, clearly raise some eyebrows. I mean,
right.
In fact,
first off, on college sports alone, what you're raising eyebrows because typically people are betting on NFL and pro baseball and pro hoops. Anything college-wise is going to, catch their eyes, and that's what happened.
Well, so for those of you that haven't followed this story, it's an amazing story, and Scott did a beautiful job writing about it. So this bet is made from Great American Ballpark. Well, naturally, sirens are going off. Red flags are going off everywhere. The long and short of it is, correct me if I'm wrong here, Scott, is that the guy who made the bet for the Alabama baseball coach, they track down on his phone, they ping the thing leading to the Alabama coach who's immediately fired. But it turns out the guy who made the bet is the father, and I feel terrible for the kid, is the father of a player on the University of Cincinnati baseball team. So what happens next?
Well, it's an odd situation. First off, his son didn't even play this year. He was on the roster. I'm not sure if he was injured or what. He appeared in 4 games the previous year, didn't play a ton. Maybe the dad was bored, but, the story that we were able to confirm, and again, it was Pat Forty and Ross Dellinger and Richard Johnson that did the original story. So then my job at this point, let's go confirm, okay, this is what we're hearing. Have you heard this name? And you got to try to talk to some people that quite honestly don't want to talk. And UC kind of circled the wagons on their players, and they were not to comment. And I can tell them that they didn't. But, I had to find some people that could maybe speak about this. And I quite honestly feel bad about it. I know Andy Nagel. I don't know Kyle Sprague, the other guy. Andy Nagel's a decent guy, coached at Moeller 8 years, sent him tape of my own son for some critique at one point. So I got nothing against these guys, but this is the dirty part of my job where you have to report on some negative stuff every now and then. And so this is what happens. Apparently Bert Neff is the man out of Mooresville, Indiana. He works or has been connected with the Indiana Elite organization, baseball amateur organization. He sent a lot of kids to college campuses. So he has some connections in college baseball. And obviously one of them must be Brad Bohannon, because Brad Bohannon, when they, as the allegations go, when his number one is down with some back tightness, makes a call, and then there's a bet for LSU. It's not the smartest thing in the world. You would think a coach at Alabama would be well set and not need to wager for a living. But, this is what we live in now with gambling. And, you guys are sponsored by Betfred. My own kids have DraftKings on their phones. You can sit and watch a game. You can bet on, is the next pitch a ball or a strike? So we have this temptation around us, and there it is. Now, I don't know Mr. Neff. I don't know his son. The unfortunate thing with Andy Nagel and Kyle Sprague is apparently they had some knowledge of what was going on. What that is, I don't know. Was it a conversation? Was it just, maybe we're not going to say anything, but UC, I think, in a preliminary strike, let him go. You look at John Cunningham as an athletic director. He's an attorney. He comes from compliance. He's going to be proactive on any of this stuff. And I tell you, in the beginning, I had no idea these two things were connected. I thought it was pretty far-fetched when people said that. And then you do some homework and find out, okay, why did the Ohio Gaming Commission shut down activity on Alabama? Well, the bet was placed at Great American. Why was it placed at Great American? Was it because no one's going to find out there? Who knows? But then it was also shut down in Indiana. Well, Mr. Neff is from Indiana. So then you have two red flags going on there. And then come to find out he's somewhat involved in the UC situation. Now, my sources say that Andy Nagel and Kyle Sprague did not bet on UC games. So the betting angle for them is not that they were involved. It appears to be that they had knowledge of what was going on and therefore were let go.
I'm just having a hard time, Scott. I mean, look. I mean, I hate to put it like this, but it just seems to me it's almost like, okay, if you follow the logical trail, and you correct me if I'm wrong here for a second, my son and I were talking about this. The logical trail is the kid for UC, whose dad made the bets, is probably just showing his stuff on his phone to some teammates. Maybe the coaches catch wind of it from teammates or whatever it might be. Okay, they hear about it. They don't tell anybody about it. And that's the reason they were fired. But I mean, if you or I heard about, this guy's dad in another place was going to steal a car, but
Right.
we didn't tell anybody he was going to steal a car. I mean, I know this is a little bit of a reach here, but I mean, it just seems to me that, did they really do anything wrong that would force them to lose their job?
Well, here's the issue you run into is Andy is the director of baseball operations. Therefore, I'm sure he knows every parent. If he is exchanging information with a parent and then that parent were to act on it, then that would be an issue. That's like insider trading and all that. Now, again, I do not know what occurred between Nagel, Sprague, and Bert Neff. I can tell you what one account was that Mr. Neff was described as toxic. So other parents knew. Now, no one's coming really forth with a bunch of that, and I understand why. But it's very odd. Then to find out it's all connected with Alabama, and gee whiz, it's and as you mentioned, it's a shame for the kid. And it's a shame for a lot of things because this could be very costly. You've let two coaches go. To UC's credit, they played 5 games down on the coaching staff. They beat Houston, a pretty good team. They lost the next 4, some one-run games. They lost their last game to number 15 East Carolina and actually were leading before like a 4-hour rain delay. So the kids kind of recouped and regathered and went on. But now you have a team, okay, they're 24-33. You're going into the Big 12. Scott Huggins has done what he could. He did a real good job at Xavier, but at UC, it's 1 winning season out of 6. What are they going to do? Central Florida, pretty good team, just let go their coach who had 33, 34 wins. So is there another move to come? We don't know. And that's the sad part of it. Scott might have to pay for what has happened. I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth.
Right.
I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, you're going into the Big 12, highly competitive conference. This is not good news for anyone on the coaching staff, I wouldn't think, nor any players. I've already seen one player's already in the portal. He didn't play much, but, UC had a fair amount of local kids on that team, some kids from Baden and from Mason and different places. And I knew some of them, but it's not the best of news. And then the odd thing, and I know why they did it from a PR standpoint, but these terminations were on May 17th. Well, on May 23rd, they did the groundbreaking for the nice new indoor facility, and we didn't know anything about the baseball at that point. And then the baseball team still had a game. So I think they were waiting for those two things to occur, and then it became public. So they kind of sat on it for a week because Andy Nagel had been let go his last broadcast. He did color for ESPN Plus,
Right.
and last game was May 16th, and UC had a handful of games after that. So we didn't know for a week, but then you go back to when all this originated. UC's investigation started on May the 8th, And, Alabama's stuff, that the game in question with LSU is April 28th, and they made their decision on May 4th with Bohannon. So then things start to tie in. So it's highly unfortunate for a lot of people. Just it sounds like the actions of one are going to cost maybe more.
Well, you just hope this thing doesn't all of a sudden more and more and more and more. You know how this thing goes.
Well, they assumably have his cell phone. So if anyone was texting Bohannon, the cell phone is university property, and you might not want to have his number. It might not be a good number for you to have had.
Well, then you better get then Casey, Paul. You guys better get it out of your phone. All right, now let's get over to the good stuff.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and I'd much prefer to talk about the good stuff. Look, there's a lot going on positively about UC. You talked about the groundbreaking. That's going to be a big deal. Going to take 2 years to build that indoor facility performance center over there. It's going to be spectacular. So that's one thing. But then you get into, let's start with football. They land the big transfer from Florida, former 4-star recruit. It seems like Satterfield is relentless in his recruiting of not only guys in the portal, but also high school guys. He's got a lot going on in a short amount of time, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, and they've kind of taken an NFL model. They hired a general manager. They hired a young man. He was at Western Kentucky, did really well. Ohio State had hired him. Zach Grant is his name. Cass Simmons is another guy. Jack Griffith they got from the New York Jets, who've been with the pros, and he knows what they look for. And I don't want to – they have a ton of staff, so my apologies to any of y'all that I'm leaving your names out. But they've done a dynamite job. And so, it used to be the coaches had to do all this. Well, now you have a personnel staff. Remember for years people would say, well, why don't the Bengals have a personnel staff? And that has grown over the years and helped out. But UC, I've never seen anything like it where they have that many people focused on transfer portal, looking at tape, visits, all that. It's a machine. And the result is, if you look at the 2024 class, not this next year, but for 2024, out of the Big 12 schools, they're currently ranked number one. If you go by 247 Sports, they're ranked number one. And that's pretty amazing considering
it's really amazing. I mean, that is a staggering fact that they're where they are with a guy that's not even coached a game here yet.
Right. Well, and they're able to sell the conference, the media package. Obviously, the NIL probably has something to do with it. I know when they come in on a visit, Coach Satterfield said, "Hey, do you guys see what we're doing there on the corner?" And then they show them the plans for all that. I mean, that'll be spectacular. It's so amazing to me how I was there for the groundbreak. I believe you were too, for the groundbreaking of the bubble.
Yeah.
And that was something new. And suddenly the bubble is out of the way, and you're putting up a permanent structure, which is one of the things Luke Fickell had pushed for forever and a day, and now it's finally coming. And then the performance center, which will be attached to it, is something new, and all the sports use it. But this is where they call it refueling. But the kids can after their workouts. It's not like being an athlete 20 years ago. I mean, these kids really have a pretty good deal.
The same thing, Scott, seems to be occurring on the basketball side. We know about the guys they lost, and they lost some important guys, including the guy who is just a phenomenal player there, a great career in DeJulius. But they land the big guy from Utah Valley.
Aziz.
And they look like again, they haven't played a game yet, and you want to win the season, not necessarily the off season. But would you say it's been a good offseason for Wes Miller?
I would say, considering who you immediately lost, and I think every team goes through this anymore because we're all reshuffling the rosters, the way college athletics is going. But, when you lose Landers Nolly and DeJulius graduates and suddenly, okay, Davenport's gone, Adams Woods gone, say what you want about those guys. They had their high points. They helped out. But when you lose a guy, you got to replace him with somebody. But the Aziz Bandiego, I'll learn the correct pronunciation of his name at some point. But I saw the kid play in that NIT game out in Utah. He had 15 points and 12 rebounds. He ran the floor, tremendous wingspan. I think on the season was 5 out of 13 from 3-point range, which is pretty good for a guy 7 feet tall. So I was really impressed with him, as I was with their whole team. And then the Butler kid is Seamus. It's Simas, but pronounced Seamus Locucius. Played at Butler. The Xavier fans are probably a little bit more familiar with him, but a 6'7" wing that can shoot. So maybe that takes the Davenport role. Jamil Reynolds from Temple, wide body, 6'11",
Yep.
280 pounds. So you got two different types of big men, but one 7 feet, one 6'11", in addition to having Victor Larkin, in addition to having Odi Oguama. And you really have to like the front court. Now in the back court, the question is, are these young guys going to be able to get it done? You lost Adams Woods, you lost to Julius, but you got Jizzle James coming in, and Davion Thomas, and Rayvon Griffith, I think, is going to be a swing guy. But the younger guys are going to have to step up at guard. Then there's the Tennessee transfer still out there, and I saw that UC was at least involved with him, the Julian Phillips. Goodness, if you had him, you got to feel pretty good going into the Big 12.
Before I let you go, I want to circle back one more time on football because, look, it used to be at UC basketball ran the boat. Here in the last number of years, it's being driven by Fickle and what he did and everything else. Satterfield comes in. We know the schedule that UC is going to play. What do you think is a reasonable win total for this football team this coming year? I mean, they got Jones, who looks to be a player. I mean, has he had his kind of ups and downs and bounced around? Yeah, but I mean, he's an athlete. He's a player. And it looks like now with Bryant gone, he for sure is a number one guy. We know they have good players. We know they're going into a big-time conference. What's reasonable?
Well, I think the defense holds up. I mean, you might be winning games with your defense, but, you look at the defensive line with Corleone and Jawan Briggs, Malik Band is back and all that. So you ought to be able to hold some teams down. It's like, okay, now can you score? Emory Jones Jr. looked pretty decent during the spring game, probably the best he looked all spring. And he was not allowed to run the ball. They had the green shirt on him. The young freshman, Brady Dragos, was live and was able to run some, and he looked pretty sharp. And then you didn't see Evan Prater, but, Evan had his problems late in the year, but this offense is more tailored to his skills. So you might see him. We don't know right now. Most teams need two quarterbacks in big-time football. But, looking at the schedule, I thought the schedule when it came out was decent. So, obviously bowl eligibility is 6 wins. I think if you get to 6 wins, you ought to be satisfied, at least for now. And then knowing that you got a really good 2024 class coming in. If you get 7, I know whoever gets to predict how many wins the team's going to have, I think people have said 5, 4.5, however the math works. I don't know how you get the half win. Those don't seem to count to me, but yeah. And I've asked Satterfield that. It's like, well, the guys probably have a bit of a chip on their shoulder when they're predicted to win maybe 4 or 5. And he said, yeah. And, you brought in some junior college guys have been at decent programs. You got, 4 Gators now, Jordan Young and defensive backfield, DJ Taylor, Emory at quarterback, and now the new receiver, Xavier Henderson. And I've seen some of him catching deep balls, and that's a nice threat to have. So, SEC is pretty good. You get some SEC talent, that's pretty good. So it's a big question mark, I know, because we really haven't seen these guys. We have nothing to base it on. I think if you can get to a bowl game, though, you ought to be happy this year.
All right. Scott, we really appreciate your time and your expertise on everything. Thanks so much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Good luck to the Mighty Warriors tomorrow and young Luke and goal.
We miss you on that beat, I mean, you're a big-time operator now over at UC, but, I mean, when you were doing the high school thing, my son was getting to know you, talking to you all the time over there.
Well, he's a media legend, he's calling games and saving goals and all that. So it's in the blood, man.
All right. Well, thank you. We miss seeing you at those games, but continue the great work. Thank you, Scott. Scott Springer from Cincinnati.com. Good man.